Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of Windows on the World. We're going to be talking about this phenomenon of internet trolling and also gang stalking, which seems to have been denigrated as something which may be experienced by people with active imaginations or overactive imaginations, or even narcissists who want attention. Well, actually, this is not the case, because I've done a lot of investigation into this over the years, and I've actually been a victim of gang stalking. And guess what? The people who accuse you of gang stalking them are gang stalking you. Now, gang stalking as a phenomenon is actually where a group of people are recruited to actually demonize one person. And it's quite interesting. I've got a summary here of how it works. So the most common way it works is that a direct attack is made upon the reputation of a person. We're talking about online attacks here, obviously, not people who are literally getting stalked by people appearing outside their houses and threatening them physically. We're talking about this as an online phenomenon, which is mainly where the word gang stalking actually came from. But then what happens is the reputation of a person is undermined and attacked online, libeled really. It's defamation, it's usually defamation, it's usually illegal what these people do. And the person then defends the attack, which is now pretty much always online. A group aligned to the attacker basically support false accusations made against the victim. And the group become unified through their demonization of the person. So it's like a kind of groupthink and attack dog mentality. And it's very, very prevalent on the internet. And people actually get involved in it without really thinking. But the group becomes unified through their demonization and multiple attacks and trying to get traction with the wider public. This is what it's about. They throw as much as they can. And they're desperately trying to get attraction going, basically traction and attracting the wider public into attacking the person. And that's what mainly this is about. Because when we're talking about people who put things out that are true, they get attacked in this way. Now, the mainstream media does this, but not to the extent that these groups can do it, because the mainstream media are obviously bound by strict laws, because they're putting it in print, which is libel and defamation of character. Now, when this is done as hearsay on the internet, it's not really taken as seriously, but it can have very serious consequences, including idiotic people believing it, or maybe not such idiotic people believing it because it's been thrust at them all the time, a bit like the mainstream media. If you keep getting something that's repeated over and over again, people tend to believe it. Then the public become part of the gang. And then what's really interesting about this is the intelligence services and groups like 7-7 Brigade, which is a professional troll army made up of, guess what? Yes, the army, the British Army, based in Reading, Berkshire. You can have a look at a show we did called Facebook's UK Army. I think it's Facebook's Internet Trolls, I think it's called. And it's pretty hidden on YouTube, actually, but you can find it at windowsontheworld.net. That's all about this 7-7 Brigade, which was formed, I think, around 2015, 1,500 British Army troops sat on computers trying to control the narrative on social media. So we're in a real quagmire here, and it's called counterintelligence. So anything that attacks the reputation of a person or undermines them in the eyes of the public can be counterintelligence. In other words, you put out something that's true, they say it's a lie, they say you're this, that, and the other. The attacks are usually personal, they're against the person. They're not actually about the information, usually. That's really important. They don't usually attack the information. So this is all the object of online harassment and defamation. They throw everything and hope some of it will stick. And that's gaslighting and abuse, and it wears down the victim. The consequences of this are that people can then act very irrationally. If you start agitating a target, and this is in a Joint Threat Risk Intelligence Group briefing and slideshow, which is featured at windowsontheworld.net, in an article called Police State Harassment Exposed. Take a look at that, so I'm going to be updating it. And our show on Sunday, The Assassination of Truth, or The Truth Assassins, will go really into this and actually give prima facie evidence and case studies of stalking on the internet, libelling and defamation on the internet, and groups of people actively attacking a target. And I've got very much personal experience of this. It happened to me about 5-6 years ago. It's also happened to me more recently in a different context. So we're talking about something that's quite common here, but which has been misrepresented by academia. So the word gang stalking has been undermined almost to say, well, these are the sort of people who think that thoughts are being put in their heads and they're saying that the government's monitoring their every move. These are the sort of things that were said in these so-called case studies, and we're going to get into that in the show on Sunday. But my guest tonight in this show is Aaron Little, and I've known Aaron for quite a few years. We've been part of a group in London which was all about talking, really, and discussing and having presentations on factual events and historical events, anything really which had been misrepresented. So I'm going to introduce Aaron now, and we met quite a few years ago, and we were part of the 9/11 Keep Talking group. So Aaron, welcome.
Hello everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me, Mark.
Well, it's great to have you on, because I think the last time we did a show together, it was all about this group in the UK, which is basically an arm of MI5. Admittedly, that's what they say about themselves. They're called Hope Not Hate, and they're there to demonize anything outside the official narrative in a sense which is communitarian, but also it's extremely subversive. So in other words, they attack and demonize the person. Now, because I'd spoken at this group, the 9/11 group, Keep Talking group, they pulled out a quote, and the quote that they used in their little advert when they were attacking the 9/11 Keep Talking group as a group of subversives, which is actually a joke, because these people are just a group of elderly academics who meet up to talk about whatever they want to talk about. So what happened was they wrote an article, and I was part of that article, and they merely said that I had people on my show whom they didn't like, which is not really a very good excuse for demonization. So they were a bit stuck with me. But because I gave people a platform, that they thought shouldn't have a platform. Well, one, what's it got to do with them? And two, what's that got to do with attacking me? This is the point. So this is where this counterintelligence thing comes into it, which I find really interesting, because I think it all crosses over into private corporations who are doing intelligence gathering. And I think that these go into these government organisations like MI5, Joint Threat Risk Intelligence Group, 7/7 Group. And I think that they all work together, because what they're doing is they're demonising anything outside the official narrative. Now, I think it'd be great to start off, Aaron, with you talking about what happened when Hope Not Hate actually demonised this 9/11 Keep Talking group to the extent which could have been comedic, but actually was very dangerous, because Antifa turned up threatening violence. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, we're going back a few years now, but as you sort of mentioned, the 9/11 Keep Talking group we're due to have a meeting, and we were all congregating outside. Now, prior to us actually entering this building, which is in Portland Street, which is hired, prior to us actually entering the building, we realised that there was loads of younger people all surrounding us, and lots of these people were masked. So this was a time before this mask business. So we had a lot of young people wearing bother boots, highly masked, disguising themselves, and we thought, what are they here for? And before we knew it, we were sort of surrounded and being prevented from entering the building to have this meeting. And we were being called Nazis, and we're being shouted out, all sorts of abuse. And when we asked these people, well, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Some of them turned around and said, well, we got a text on our phones telling us to be here because there's some neo-Nazis gathered here. And we said, well, who informed you that we are neo-Nazis and we're gathering here? At which they couldn't say. But it wasn't until further investigation that we realised that they were sort of sponsored by Hope Not Hate, and hence, if you follow the money, it went to an even more sinister type of body. So there we were, about to have our usual meeting where we're discussing political things or things that we see in the press which are bothering us. And prior to that, we were surrounded by people who were waving flags. There was the RMT, which I believe is an organisation to do with a union, and they were there waving flags, and there were all these sort of people who, up until now we'd never known before. And in fact, it was a bit of an eye-opener, because a lot of us at that time hadn't even come across the group Hope Not Hate. So for us to suddenly be surrounded by them, and then the police came along, who also prevented us from having our meeting, it was interesting to note that this had come out of nowhere. And it was just on the ill-informed information that we were a neo-Nazi group. But mind you, prior to then, because I wasn't aware that this was a terminology known as gang stalking. Up until then, the only thing that I personally was aware of regarding gang stalking was that in America, there's a cult by the name of Scientology. And when a member of their group wants to leave, they're hounded and harassed and stalked at home so that they don't say anything bad about the reasons they've left the group. So up until then, the only term I came across regarding gang stalking was referring to, cultish televangelism in America, where their members were hounded if they were thinking of leaving or wanting to leave. So this was a new sort of thing for a lot of us on that day. But yeah, we were surprised. The police were there, and we were looking around thinking, what is all this about? So but the sinister side of it all is that it's pure gossip. It's like a dirty Chinese whisper that says these people are going to talk about something that we object to. And yet they had no idea what our conversation was going to be like. They had no idea who was a member, and they were just informed by an anonymous text telling them to be at this place for this time because there's people labelled as neo-Nazis who are going to be discussing a subject that we don't want them to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's a really good example of Hope Not Hate, because they are actually a charity and they're a company, and they get a huge amount of funding. Siegfried Rousing Trust, which is a trust that you can look up, gives them £600,000. Now, what we're doing here is controlling the narrative of public opinion into what a lot of people would call the extreme leftist Marxist ideology. I'd call it communitarianism. In other words, everything outside the official narrative is demonized, and they have all the cards. And Hope Not Hate is a particularly insidious organization. And the people who actually are part of Hope Not Hate are useful idiots. They have vested interests with the British, the group called the British, because obviously it's a British-Israeli partnership. And that is extremely important. So if you openly criticize Israel, you will have Hope Not Hate jumping down your neck, and you will not know why. Now, with their tactics, I would say, Hope Not Hate have to stick within the law. However, they don't do that, because by demonizing an event of mainly elderly academics, not elderly obviously, but mainly elderly academics discussing things which is completely legal, they are breaking the law. They are inciting violence, and that's exactly what they were doing. Antifa is a terrorist organization as defined under the Terrorism Act 2000. They openly threaten violence. I have come across people who align themselves with that group. It's for political purposes, because they are part of what this cabal are bringing in, this new system, and they're useful idiots for it mainly. But there's a lot of useful idiots out there, and that's the danger. So you've just outlined something very important, in that innocent people can get dragged in to a witch hunt against other innocent people. And I think that was the interesting thing. We did several shows. Go into the archive, windowsontheworld.net, and look at our shows on Hope Not Hate. We've had 3 of them. Hope Not Hate did a little advert talking about me, actually, saying that, well, you might think that Mark Windows' conspiracy theories are just a load of tinfoil hat nonsense. You may think that if you question the moon landings, then that's okay, but it's not, because if you start questioning the moon landings, you are going to be recruited into the extreme far right. Now, they never actually explain how this is going to happen, right? Because obviously it wouldn't happen. So you question the moon landings, and that's far right, and that gives away the whole premise of what they're doing, because it's openly transparent at that point. Because if they're saying that if you question the moon landings, then you're far right, then it means that all this you're doing is you're saying something that the deep state, if you like, do not approve of. They're just telling you that. I think Hope Not Hate are a very insidious organisation, and they've said things about me, but they haven't really got anything on me. They can't call me any of the names that are usually called. What they tend to say about my show is that I facilitate and give people a platform that they don't like. Well, that's their problem. It's not my problem. But I think that's outlined something very interesting, which I wanted to take up, because what I want to get into now is this idea of internet trolling. And I've been demonized in the past by a group which centered around one person who made, basically because I didn't want to follow their ludicrous fairy story, because I only put out a fact, then all of a sudden I'm part of the cabal. And we've had a bit of that recently, haven't we, Aaron? And
Yes.
you warned me about this. It's comedic in a way, but in a way it's not, because these things can have very serious consequences. You warned me about this YouTube channel, saying that this bloke is going to go for you next, and guess what he did? But because of my experiences in the past, I was a bit kind of affronted by this, and I started to put comments on. Then I realised that you were right in your response video, which you did to this, was that this fella's not very intelligent, and he's basically putting 2 and 2 together and making whatever he wants out of it. It doesn't make any sense. It's delusional. But again, that can be dangerous. So tell us a bit about this latest internet troll that you found, because it's humorous, but it's also insidious as well.
Mm. Well, I too have been a party to his videos for the last 7 months. But what I was unaware of is that while I was at various protests, I didn't realise that I was being observed very closely by friends of this individual. Now, what he tends to do is that he'll take a photograph, or he'll use a bit of someone else's footage, because he never comes to London himself. And as a result of that, he takes a snapshot of someone. So they could be in mid-sentence, they could be about to yawn, anything. He takes a snapshot and he makes up this narrative, and the narrative is all about demonizing someone, and it's to say that someone is working as a government agent, or a crisis actor, or a police officer, or undercover, or you name it, some kind of agitator. Now, bearing in mind, when he speaks, he uses a very interesting sort of voice pattern. So he kind of lulls you in. But the whole idea about him is that he doesn't live in London. However, he's kind of envious of those who are in London. And as a result of which, because during the lockdown, the London parks have been open, even though the police have shooed us away, people have been able to meet up and have conversations. And there's been various rallies, and people have been exchanging books and newspaper articles and things. So, but this particular person, what he does, he homes in on someone, and at the minute, it doesn't matter if it's man, woman, or child, he will try and demonize them. I happen to know that some of the people whom he is demonizing are actually people who are mentally unwell. So therefore, he's actually targeting people who aren't very well, who like to go around London and various places, and they like to go around and talk. They're sort of what you might describe as eccentric characters. So he's demonizing people who are already vulnerable. But more than that, if anyone is stood near that vulnerable person, or if anyone is stood near a person currently running for the London mayor, a London mayor candidate, or if you're standing next to anyone and everyone, hence he has made a link. If you are stood next to a policeman and you're photographed or recorded as being in proximity of where the police are or anyone else, that is enough for his delusional mind to say, look, there he is. That person is an infiltrator, they're an informer, and they're talking to the police just on the basis of a snapshot. But what makes this person dangerous is that the way he puts things over, the way he says people are actors. Now, when you look at the newspaper article on a rally, then you look at the newspaper headline, and then you see what actually happened from people individually recording, you do notice, oh, well, that's not what the press said. The press are only going for a violent situation or something that looks aggressive. So the first thing is you think, oh, yes, there is a different narrative. The press are spinning something one way, but those on the ground saw it another way. So he started off on this point, but then he goes off on the biggest tangent ever by saying whoever is stood next to this person is an actor. They are making sure that this happens. They're purposely getting themselves into the newspaper or onto the news by being at the front. Look at this person. They're walking into shot. Well, if you're walking around, you don't know who's filming you, so you could be walking into shot at any point. But the whole issue is this: he has absolutely not one shred of evidence. Neither does he bother to do any research and find out people's actual names. What he does, he gives everyone a really childish and asinine sort of nickname. So he'll give, if someone's looking a bit dishevelled, he'll call them Scruffy. If someone's looking a bit, if they're looking a little bit a certain way, he'll just come up with a nickname. And these nicknames he uses in his numerous videos, because he does about 4 or 5 a day, and he'll use the same nickname, and he's just saying the same thing over and over again. And what it is, it's like if he repeats this lie often enough, he's hoping that, oh, people will absorb it and take it in. But it's purely based on lies. He's so unintelligent that he doesn't bother, like I said, to even ascertain who people are, what their profession is, where's their locale, are they a London resident, do they live within the area. So what he's done, he's focused on anyone and everyone that meets at Hyde Park. Now, as you're aware, Mark, Hyde Park is a place on a Sunday where people go and chat, that exchange information. So during this lockdown, people have been going there as well. They've continued to go there despite the police not wanting them to. But because it's a place enshrined in history for free speech, people have continued to go there. However, this guy is saying that anyone and everyone who goes to Hyde Park is an infiltrator. They're against the common cause of all people. Now, when you're at Hyde Park, you start a conversation. You could be stood next to anybody. You could be stood next to a fascist, next to a non-fascist, next to someone from BLM. You name the group, lots of people go there. And the whole idea is it's like a speakeasy. You can speak easy, and often you can speak on various things, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian, whether you're Jewish, whether you're anything. It's a whole speakeasy for all kinds of conversation. So therefore, for this person not to recognize that it's an enshrined place, people have a routine. They go there on a Sundays. It's a great place. There's also comedy. You have some people, they'll dress up, they'll wear a costume, and they'll stand on a little step ladder, and they'll give a speech on something. So it can be entertaining. It's not all serious, and it's entertaining. You've got people who heckle, you've got people who tell jokes, you've got people who talk on any subject, royalty, you name it. So for someone who is unfamiliar, and I mean very unfamiliar with London, very unfamiliar with the fact that Westminster is a small place, you can walk from one end to it to another in a short period of time. And it's very easy to find. You know, everywhere is located in Westminster, and the people know it. Renowned places, Big Ben, people know where that is. You know, Parliament Square, people know where that is. So everything is walkable, and it's all near each other. And those who are London local, they go to it. There's nothing else to do. All the all the pubs, all the community centres, you name it, they're all shut. That's why people have been going to parks and in particular, going to Speaker's Corner. So despite this obvious place where people are socially gathering, this imbecile makes these ludicrous inventions of his own mind. Like I say, he's got nothing to say, but he says the same thing over and over and over. He's putting people in danger to the point now that myself, when someone approaches me, whether at a march or during a gathering somewhere, I have to think twice. I have to think, number one, are they coming over to speak to me because they've been watching this character's ridiculous videos? Two, are they weak-minded enough? Could they come and damage me? Could they cause me some harm, physical harm? Because what's happening, I find, is that this character is actually inciting the weak-minded to take their out on people in London, people who always gather around, people who speak to one another. So he's actually inciting the very thing that he's accusing everyone and anyone of doing, particularly about codes. He reckons that if you're wearing red, that means something. That's a code. If you've got a Sainsbury's carrier bag, that's a code. If you've got a different kind of carrier bags, I mean, all of this is this guy's own invention. But what occurred to me, and it touches on what you've said, Mark, is this. What better kind of example to have than to have one of these characters who's making these stupid accusations, to have them as a useful idiot, as a Malcolm type, to actually be doing the role of stopping people from gathering, preventing people from coming to London, getting together and sharing ideas about this entire lockdown situation we're in. I can't think of a better distraction for someone to be sneering, someone to be lazy when it comes to research, and someone just to be very condemnatory of everybody. I can't think of a better person. And considering people have written complaints about the numerous times he's focused them in their videos, lots of people have written to YouTube and have said, this man's using my name, he's describing me, he's saying all these sort of slanderous things about me. Can you take him down? Now, as yet, nothing's happened. So either he works for Google or an internet company, because anyone else would be getting warnings by now, particularly when they're focusing on people who are mentally.
Yeah. I think you've made a few good points there. Yeah, sorry, we're getting a bit of overlap, but
sorry.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but you've made some incredibly important point there, which is that I sincerely believe that these people who are completely unhinged, making accusations, are used as attack dogs by the intelligence community. I'm absolutely convinced of it, and that is why I was rather concerned, because when these people are doing this sort of thing, then people, as you say, could get hurt. And there are so many unbalanced people out there who follow this stuff. And this is what discredits so-called alternative media, which was the whole point of this broadcast. The reason I brought up that document, which I'm going to be talking about in my Sunday show, 9:30 p.m, winnersontheworld.net, is because this whole idea of gang stalking and this trolling is undermined by the intelligence community. Therefore, it's undermined by academia because they just follow the party line. They take what they are given. They do not question it. However, I know people who've been gang stalked. I've been gang stalked by a group. Now, what's very dangerous about this is that these people are unhinged and even laughably unhinged. But there are a lot of unhinged people out there. And I've had this. I mean, I've had people, these people will say anything about you. And it's usually anything derogatory. So you're a fascist, you're a racist, you're anti-Semite, you're something else, you're something. There's only about 5 things they use, right? Now, the point is that what they then do is they try to get cohesion within those groups. So in other words, you will then find that people who you thought you knew quite well have all of a sudden dropped you because of spurious allegations. And that is the den of vipers that we're talking about. And that's almost a biblical thing, really, because we are talking about people who want to assassinate the truth. These are truth assassins. And whether they're doing it because they're mentally ill, because they're narcissists, it doesn't matter. They're still using the evil forces against people who are trying to put facts out. I've never done anything apart from put facts and research out. This is a lifelong research project, which I'm sharing. Now, I find that I get extremely affronted when these people who may be taking too much drugs, or they may be deluded, or they may have personal hatred, get in the way, because I'm not doing this as a job. I just do it because I want to do it. And when you're doing something and you see little advantage to it a lot of the time, when you get this extra dimension of real aggravation, it does have an effect. And that's my main point on doing these shows, because I think the public out there have to realize that if they go along with this, they are enabling the cabal, whatever you want to call it. I would just call it the new system of global governance. They are all part of it. So this fella who's attacked me and you, and it's all very dreary in some ways, is an asset of the intelligence services. That is the main point I'm trying to make. These people are intelligence assets. The people at MI5, the people at Hope Not Hate, need these people because they produce hate against people like us who are just trying to find things out and share information.
Yes, absolutely. They're certainly being used as tools for the government, and also to a point that they're attacking vulnerable people. We know that London's got a lot of characters, eccentric characters, and this person is actually attacking lots of people who are actually just eccentric, and they wear a costume and they walk around London, and they're, for whatever reason, they're perhaps alone or isolated. And because everyone in Britain now is in a real vulnerable state, we're all vulnerable at the moment because we do not know what's going to happen from one week to the next. We have a Prime Minister who's saying one thing in a babbly, confusing manner, knowing too well he's saying, no, we won't make this, we won't have another lockdown, knowing too well that he will do. So we're all on edge. So the last thing we need now is for some complete moron to be going around and making everything feel worse, making it so that you feel you cannot trust anybody. That's his role. He's not very good at it, though, because interestingly enough, there was about 20 people in January who were members of his live panel, and they all turned around and said, we've had enough of you. You're making everyone emotionally and psychologically ill with your mass paranoia. So they all dropped him and left him. And as a result of which, they've been exposing how unintelligent he is, what a psychological bully he is, and how he's got nothing but photographs of which he doesn't even give the original people credit for. So everything he does is lazy. So he had a mass, there was a mass sort of walking out on his site, and lots of people, you know, they maybe at the beginning they maybe think, oh, perhaps he's onto something, but after a while they've gotten to wake up and to know that this guy's got nothing and he is nothing. If anything, he's a very insecure individual whose anger and vitriol, it comes out in the way he speaks and the language he uses, and the fact that he's got nothing to say other than to repeat himself. But it's interesting how he's suddenly, I mean, I found it ludicrous, Mark, that he should go around and start having a go at you, because you've got a archive of research you've done, and to think this idiot had the gall to ask you to come on to his live chat panel. And I said,
Yeah.
there's no way, Mark, you are going to condescend to give this little idiot a moment of your time. So I'm really pleased that, you know, you reacted that way, because I thought, this guy's is so deluded. He wants to challenge you, of all people, Mark. You've got bundles and files of research you've done. You could outpace him in a moment. So that's how delusional he is, isn't he?
Well, what happened was, I mean, you alerted me with that email, and I wasn't really too bothered about it. But when I saw what he was doing, I could see the potential dangers ahead, you see. Now, what he put up was, he was demanding to know what my relationship with Nick Collerstrom and Piers Corbyn was. Well, Nick, I've known about 10 years. So I used to live in Walthamstow, and so did Nick. And Piers Corbyn, I got onto my show when I met him at the Kent Freedom Movement about 10 years ago, which is a little pub in Kent, and he was doing a talk on the climate change issue. So I've had Piers on my show talking about the climate change agenda, and I think we complemented each other quite well on that, and then the social cleansing stuff. So there's nothing really to see here. It's like, why would you pick on that? They never pick on the information, you see. They never pick up on what we were actually talking about, which was quite relevant. But then he seemed to think I was making loads of money out of me talks. Well, I'm really sorry to disappoint anyone who wants to make money out of telling the truth, but you don't make any money out of it. You have to give people hopium if you want to make money. If I talked a load of new age nonsense and told people what they wanted to hear, I'd make lots of money. I never made any money out of the talks. In fact, we lost money on a lot of them. But he put a picture up with me, I think it was Sandy Adams, Piers Corbyn, David Dubine, and we had to bring David Dubine over to America for that. I didn't even book that show. It was at Glastonbury Town Hall. And when you take the petrol out and the time, you don't make anything. You can't make anything out of that. You just can't do it. And this is another thing, Aaron, that really galled me about it, is that I was going around the country basically for nothing, warning people about what's just happening now at 1,000 miles an hour. And guess what? Hardly anyone's interested. There's only a few people who really get this anyway. But then he's put up a picture of myself and David Shayler from 2014 when I was at the People's Voice TV. And ironically, that show is all about being demonized on the internet and by gang stalkers who came into the People's Voice television on behalf of a complete lunatic, someone even more unhinged than him, which completely confused everyone in there. But they set up a dedicated website to try and destroy my chances of getting my information to the public. So this is why I see the dangers in it. But he wouldn't address that, you see. That video, he put a snapshot of that video. The video is all about what he's actually doing, and there's the irony.
Yes, I know. And the other thing is, who on earth does he think he is?
Yes.
Who on earth does he think he's
exactly.
asking you, like a headmaster, to come into his office? The guy is off his nut. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
I mean, he's a nobody.
But also, Aaron, there's a point here that's quite important, because what he's doing it in public, and that is a very subversive tactic. If he'd have emailed me and go, Mark, what's your... I say, okay, I'll tell you, that's not a problem. But when you do something in public, that's an aggressive and intimidatory tactic. And it's extremely cowardly as well, because what he will then do is say, well, he wouldn't come on the show, or he refused, you see. Now, that's called an ambush. You see, that's not an invitation, it's an ambush. And when I see these tactics, it doesn't matter whether it's by a lunatic like this fella or whatever he is, or the state they use the same tactics, and they use these very subversive techniques against you. And that's what my show on Sunday is going to be about this Sunday. winnersontheworld.net. Subscribe to us on Spreaker and all the rest. Do it on the homepage at Winners on the World. But yeah, I think that's really made some good points, Aaron. And thanks for that. And we'll do some more in the very near future. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yes. The best form of dealing with someone who is gang stalking via the YouTube is to make a response video and then completely forget about him, because he needs drama. He likes to create drama, and he needs to be spoken about. And because this character talks of himself in the third person, that tells you that he really is addicted to having the name of his channel spoken. So it's really good that during this broadcast, Mark, we've not mentioned his name at all, but we've referred to him. So he won't be liking that, because he thrives on the name of his YouTube channel being mentioned. So once it's been addressed, like we've done tonight, then just forget about him, because he's a nothing and a nobody.
I think that's a really good point. What I was going to say was just something that you picked up about YouTube. I've had 2 community strikes on YouTube for not actually saying anything defamatory or anything that's untrue. All this that I said was things that their community, whatever that is, the global community, doesn't like. However, I have been libeled and defamed and attacked on YouTube by people who could have inspired, shall we say, very unhinged people to take very serious action against me. And that is absolute hypocrisy. And it shows you exactly where the power is. Because if these people can get away with defamation like that online and nothing happens. I was stalked online for probably 6 to 7 years, until somebody else who was being stalked went to the court and got an injunction to stop this person lying and defaming other people. And that is the absolute shame of what's called the media. Because if that was in a newspaper, they would have been jumped on and sued. Because it's on YouTube, it's okay. Well, it's not okay, because people can get to a point where they will, in the worst instances, be killed, and also to the point where they will become mentally unhinged. And that is what all this is about. That's what the intelligence community are trying to do. They are trying to create these cyber magicians to get inside people's heads, to destabilize them so they can't put the information out. So that's what this is all about. Outlining that, I think, is incredibly important. And thanks for coming on, Aaron. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Aaron.